Measured in Blood and Fire by Jenny Coleman, a cross-generational historical memoir. This is my stepmum. This historical cross-generational narrative takes the reader on a journey through the history of a Jewish family, starting in the Galician town of Brody and Kolomea. They travel westward to Berlin to find safety at the commencement of World War I. Their determination and resourcefulness helped them to survive the war. They experienced the starvation of thousands, the Great Flu epidemic, hyperinflation in the Weimar Republic, and political turmoil between the wars. Eventually, they managed to build a new and successful life for themselves on the Kurfurstendamm. Alas, the Nazis are coming to power. The family is torn apart, their wealth stolen. Some head for America, some for Palestine, some for the concentration camps. Murder, imprisonment, and illness leave their mark. We, their descendants, go on a search for identity and discover not only our painful history, but members of the family we thought were gone forever. A cross-generational memoir of a Jewish family, Jenny Coleman. For my family, past, present, and future, with love. And she lives in Germany. And I always thought she was German, so I don't know where that goes down. Julia Weiselberg, also known as Hashed Slosher. Summary. This historical cross-generational narrative takes the reader on a journey through the history of a Jewish family. Starting in the Galician town of Brody and Kolomea, they travel westward to Berlin to find safety at the commencement of World War I. It could be in the Galician towns of Brody and Kolomea. They travel westward to Berlin to find safety at the commencement of World War I. It could be neither. Their determination and resourcefulness helped them to survive the war. They experienced the famine and the Great Flu epidemic, in which thousands died, hyperinflation in the Weimar Republic, and political turmoil between the wars. Eventually, they managed to build a new and successful life for themselves on the Kurfurstendamm, Berlin. But danger brews as the Nazis gain power. The families torn apart, their wealth stolen. Some head for America, some for Palestine, and some for the concentration camps. Murder, imprisonment, and illness leave their mark. We, their descendants, go on a search for identity and discover not only our painful history, but members of the family we thought were gone forever. Excuse me. I have to adjust my posture. Voices from the past tell our family's history. Some of these are loud and clear. Others have become almost inaudible. Where this has happened, I use my empathic senses to fill in the blanks. This is, therefore, my particular version of our family story. Introduction. (2012) Gauting, Bavaria. When I first decided to write a book about my ancestors, I launched into the task with great enthusiasm, very little planning, and only sketchy ideas about how I was going to achieve my aims. My husband Kevin suggested that maybe I should make a plan. What? Me? I don't do planning, I informed him. Of course he was not surprised. He lives with me. He knows how I go about things. Sure enough, before long I was sitting on my settee with my laptop on my lap and typing away with abandon. 3,000 words, 4,000, then 10,000 words. Wow, this was all right. I would have this book finished in no time. Then I looked at it again and discovered it didn't read well. I would have to start from the beginning and do a better job this time. Eventually, after many weeks and then months, I became totally engrossed in the tragic story of my ancestors, and the main part of the book came together. I lived and dreamed my family's hopes, their trials and tribulations, their fears, their exposure to the merciless, politics of the time, and then their inevitable, inescapable fate. This focus on the past played with my emotions. I had weeks without a good night's sleep, endless conversations about their lives with Kevin, with my family, and inevitably also with myself. I now have a book which describes the incredible journey through time taken by my Jewish family. This is not just a story about Nazi Germany. It is an account of momentous events that occurred in many different parts of the world. It attempts to capture their lives to the best of my ability, and it describes the history they lived through. Much of this tale is only recently discovered and would have been lost forever had certain facts not come to light. Some details were discovered entirely because of the tenacity of my niece, Nicola, who spent great amounts of time researching and writing letters. In this way, she managed to find critical information which was invaluable in piecing together a picture of the past. However, despite her best efforts, many pieces of the jigsaw puzzle were still missing, and this is when my older sister, Vivian, came up with an astonishing idea. She decided to ask an expert about how to research Jewish history, and where better to start than with one of the PhD students of Jewish history at the Munich University. Surely such a person would be able to tell us how to go about tracing our roots. Somehow she managed to obtain a list of students who were reading Jewish history and picked out one name, Helen, at random. On the 23rd of July 2012, she sent this email. Dear Helen, you are certain to be wondering why I am writing to you. I have found your name amongst the list of students of Jewish history in Munich, and I am wondering if you can help me with some tips. I once knew a girl with a surname the same as yours, and this is why I decided to randomly select you from the list. My name is Vivian. My father was called Max and was a Jew born in Berlin. The family fled in 1933 from the Nazis, and my father and his mother, Julia Weiselberg, were attacked during the Arab Revolt on a beach in Tel Aviv. His mother died, and my father, as a result of the injuries he sustained, died in 1966 of a brain tumour. This history has been burdening my family more or less right up to the present day. My daughter now wants to find out more, and I am wondering if you, as a Jewish student, would have any idea about how to proceed with any research. We were able to establish my grandmother's maiden name from the registry office in Charlottenburg, but are unable to gain further information because in our family the incident was a taboo subject and all details have been lost. If you could provide us with a pointer as to how we could proceed, the family would be extremely grateful, and if, in return, we can do anything to help you in the future, we would be very willing to do so. Thank you very, very much, and I do hope you don't consider me totally insane. Vivian. Vivian did not receive a reply straight away, but finally, on the 3rd of August, she got an answer from Helen. I have summarised Helen's reply and have abbreviated the rather long text to the essentials. Helen wrote as follows. Dear Vivian, to be honest, I was surprised about your email, but in the end, my curiosity as a historian overcame my scepticism. I would love to know exactly where you found my contact information and why you chose me to write to. It is certainly the case that I have been working in various Israeli state archives for my dissertation project. My dissertation was about the time between 1911 and 1948 in Palestine. I am particularly interested in the so-called Jiskor books and any information about civilians' victims. As luck would have it, during my last visit to Israel, I purchased such a book from an antique shop. The book is dated 1937. In the book can be found a list of victims and, where available, a photograph as well as details of their life and the circumstances of their death. In this old publication, I found reference to a woman called Julia Koller, who, according to the entry in the book, went for a walk on the 15th of February 1936. It's my birthday. Obviously not in 36, and was beaten to death. Her 13-year-old son was heavily injured. However, this event did not take place in Tel Aviv, as you stated in your email, but in Haifa. Also, she did not immigrate in 1933, but only 3 months before the attack, and she came from Berlin, Germany. She is also shown to have been born in Kolomea in 1891, and at the time of her death, she was 45 years old. She left a husband and 2 children. There is a photograph of a woman with short hair, styled in the fashion of the 30s. It seems likely that this woman is your grandmother. Oh, powerful energies. We have got Mozart, heal the body, heal the energies, heal the trauma. Individual, collective, Mother Gaia. The email went on to give further details. Helen included a number of links to websites, most of them written in Hebrew. However, there was one newspaper article in German and another in English. This response was totally unexpected. Never in our wildest dreams did we imagine receiving a reply like this. Amongst the various links Helen sent us was one particular treasure for us as a family, our very first photograph of our grandmother, Julia Koller. Later, we discovered that she was officially born out of wedlock to a woman called Pearl Chain Sensib. Her father's name was Salmon Schlosser, but for unknown reasons, she adopted the name Weiselberg. Just going to lower the volume again. There we go. We scrutinized this precious photograph closely and compared her face to ours, searching for a likeness. We thought she looked very much like Leah, Nicola's oldest daughter. By the time we had processed this new information, it was 2013. And a few months since Helen sent her informative email. The contents had planted a seed in us, and the seed had germinated. Helen's information was the breakthrough we had been seeking, and the pieces began to fall into place. After writing to the archive department in Berlin, we now had in our possession an assortment of documents which we were able to study. Nicola had filed them all carefully in a red ring binder, and one day I sat in front of this file and started turning the pages. Much of the print quality was poor and faded with age. Some details were written in old German script. We could manage to decipher those. Others, though, were written in Hebrew and some in Polish. This was more difficult. I looked at the names and tried to make sense of the family tree and the historical context. As the trauma of the event sank into my subconscious, I struggled to make my family real. How terrible to have lived such lives, and then to be utterly forgotten, as if the people had not mattered at all. when it said before, later we discovered that she was officially born out of wedlock. It's got a Appendix 1, and this is the Appendix 1. In 19th century Poland, part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, couples were required to undergo both a civil and a religious wedding ceremony. The civil ceremony carried an onerous tax that only the wealthy could afford. Poor couples were forced to marry without the benefit of this large tax stamp that was imprinted on an official marriage certificate. In the eyes of the state, any children from such a marriage were legally considered out of wedlock. How terrible to have lived such lives and then to be utterly forgotten, as if the people had not mattered at all. How many thousands of other families had suffered this fate? The justice of it welled up inside me, and I knew with certainty that to remember them and to honour them, I needed to understand, really understand what happened. There was only one way for me to do this, because my personal strength lies in empathy and intuition, not in facts and figures. I would have to try to live their lives in my imagination. Only in this way could I become familiar with their personalities, their joys and heartaches, their love, their intelligence, and eventually their death. It was a difficult process, contemplating the tough life of my great-grandfather Manish, while sitting on a comfortable settee in my warm flat in Upper Bavaria. Here we live in a very different world, an affluent world of peace and apparent certainty. In contrast, during those times of the 19th and early 20th century, momentous and violent events took away all control from those unfortunate individuals who were caught up in this turbulence. The Jews, as a race, were targeted. Every man, woman, and child. They may not have known it at the beginning of their lives, but ultimately it made them as powerless as flotsam in a stormy sea. Before moving on to the rest of our family, I have started with our earliest known records and attempted to reach into the past and understand my Jewish great-granddad Manish. I journeyed back and forth. I journeyed back and leapt into his life and his mind, to imagine what might perhaps have been his own words or thoughts, in the reality of the world he found himself in, as if he were speaking from the grave. And then it goes on to part 1, Brody Kolomea life, Manish Kola. And that's where we'll take off next time when we continue reading this family, this cross-generational historical memoir. Namaste. Healing and love and compassion, and goes out to all of the past and the present and the future of any suffering of humanity, with gratitude for what suffering teaches one. Namaste.